Chapter 3 of The Lost Sheep Found. There were 99 that safely lay in the shelter of the fold, but one was out on the hills away, far off from the gates of gold, away on the mountains wild and bare, away from the tender shepherd's care. I was put to the carpet weaving business, and for 2 years not a word could be said against me. All the keepers and guards spoke well of me. I minded my work and was quiet and orderly. I used to say my prayer, the Lord's Prayer, every day from a feeling that it was right to say it, that in some way or other it would do me good. I tried to learn to read and write, and improved very much, more especially in reading. Then I got cheap novels and read, to pass away the time. I read many and many of them. It was all the recreation I had. All diverted my mind from my dreary surroundings. I was supplied with them constantly, and in consequence my head was filled with low and wicked thoughts. I took a fancy, from some form of the remarkable stories I read, that I might, by some good fortune, by and by, effect my escape from the prison, and then my heart would fill up with murderous intentions toward the man who put me in. After this I was sick, and suffered a good deal for 2 or 3 years, and became at times uneasy and intractable. Then I had to suffer severe punishment, but punishment never did me a particle of good. It only made me harder and harder. I had been in the prison 4 or 5 years, when, one Sunday morning, I went with the rest of the service in the chapel. I was moody and miserable. As I took my seat, I raised my eyes carelessly to the platform, and who should I see there beside the chaplain but a man named Orville Gardner, who had been for years a confederate in sin. Awful Gardner was the name by which I had always known him. Since my imprisonment he had been converted, and was filled with desire to come to the prison, that he might tell the glad story to the prisoners. I had not heard he was coming, and could not have been more surprised if an angel had come down from heaven. I knew him at the first glance, although he was so greatly changed from his old rough dress and appearance. After the first look I began to question in my mind if it was he after all, and thought I must be mistaken. But the moment he spoke I was sure, and my attention was held fast. He said he did not feel that he belonged on the platform where the ministers of God and good men stood to preach the gospel to the prisoners. He was not worthy of such a place. So he came down and stood on the floor in front of the desk, that he might be among the men. He told them it was only a little while since he had taken off the stripes which they were then wearing, and while he was talking his tears fairly ran down out of his eyes. Then he knelt down and prayed and sobbed and cried, till I do not believe there was a dry eye in the whole crowd. Tears filled my eyes, and I raised my hands slowly to wipe them off, for I was ashamed to have my companions or the guard see me weep. But how I wished I was alone, or that it was dark, that I might give way to my feelings unobserved. I knew this man was no hypocrite. We had been associated in many a dark deed and sinful pleasure. I had heard oaths and curses, vile and angry words from his mouth, and I knew he could not talk as he did then unless some great, wonderful change had come to him. I devoured every word that fell from his lips, though I could not understand half I heard. One sentence, however, impressed me deeply, which, he said, was a verse from the Bible. The Bible! I knew there was such a book, that people pretended it was a message from God, but I had never cared for it, or read a word in it. But now God's time had come, and he was going to show me the treasures that were hid in that precious book. End of chapter 3.